Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is make sure that they are pinned in place. So you'll pin the ribbons in and you'll make sure that you put a little bit of an end here. You turn this end, which is the rough end of the ribbon, over so that it neatens that up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a stab stitch or a whip stitch all the way round. Okay, so this is the thread that we're going to be using, and it's a waxed cord, and we're going to be just threading that up, and then we're going to be just putting a little knot in the end here, just like that. Okay, make sure that that's nice and tight. Then we're just going to take it and we're going to just take that knot underneath, just like that, so it's nice and out of the way. Okay, and I don't like loose ends, so let's just flick in a little bit so it's easier for us to see. Let's go a little bit closer. Okay, so I'm just going to tuck that around, and if we turn this over like that, so we turn the heel inside out, make it much easier to get control. And what I'm doing is I'm putting my 2 fingers under here to make sure that this is nice and taut, and my finger is just under here pushing this up all the time, so it's easy for me to catch in that fabric, because you want to catch this fabric in, but you don't want to obviously come up on the satin side. Okay, so I've just tucked that nicely behind there so that that tail isn't in the way, and we'll just pull that down. You may want to use a pin instead of a safety pin. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to whip around. So I prefer to, once you've done that little stitch there, is to just now start to catch that in like that and come up. So you're going down into the fabric, into the ribbon, and you're coming up like that. So just make sure that that little tail is hidden. So we're just going to whip it around like that. This is actually called a stab stitch. This is how you apply fabric on. So we'll just come through like that. Just like that. Okay, so then you're just going to carry on. Just get that in place so that we can see easily. And make sure that we're all on the screen. So now you're just going to come around, going to catch that in like that, okay, and go through there like that, or just catch it in and then go at a slight angle like that. So you can either go this way or you can go down the other way. Okay, and then you get these nice little straight stitches on the surface, just like that. So down like that, and then making sure that you're not actually coming through the satin on the other side, just like that. Okay, and you've got these nice little stitches there like that. So into the fabric and then up like this. Just make sure that you come up and you're going into that fabric here. You want to go into this fabric every time, and that you're just coming up just on the edge of your ribbon. So if you come too far up like this, clearly that's much too far away. You want to make sure that you're coming up just there so that it's just on the edge of that ribbon, and you're pulling it nicely through like that. Okay, so this is a little bit in the way now, so I'm just going to take that safety pin out. Okay, remove that. Let's make sure it doesn't drop on the floor there. Okay, so we're just going to catch that in and come up now into this edge. Okay, you do, when you get to the thicker part, you do have to give it a little bit of a wiggle, because it doesn't necessarily want to go through that fabric. Okay, so you're coming in up at an angle, just like that. Okay, and then for this one, I'm just going to do a nice straight stitch that's then going to come up just there, because that's on the edge, and then we need to whip that in and catch that stitch as well. So you've got this nice little row of these stab stitches. Okay, so now we're going to turn it over and we're going to do this top area here. Okay, we just want to whip that around to make sure that it holds nicely in place. So if you hold that in place just there, just along the edge of the shoe, and then you can just go into that and into the edge. So let's make sure that that is nicely on the edge there. So we're doing straight stitches here and we're going at a slight angle just here. Okay, we'll pull that through so it does a nice little tight stitch. So again, straight there, slight angle there, and do try and get your stitches the same distance apart. Obviously it is a little bit tricky when you're having to pull it through so tightly, but you know, it is good to try. So when you're sticking that in there, then obviously if you try and come up at the same distance here, then it just makes for a really nice, neat little row of stitches. So we're just going to hold that in, put that through. Okay, so we're just going to come up at that same angle, just making sure that those stitches are more or less the same distance apart there. And that just makes a really, really nice, neat row of stitches. Okay, so you're going to carry on along this edge, and then when you finish this edge, then obviously you'll go along the other two sides in exactly the same way as you actually started. So we've got this nice little row of stitches just there like that. Okay, make sure that these are all straight and then you're coming up at that angle, and make sure that you don't actually poke yourself in your finger there. Now you may want to use a thimble. You may find it much easier to use a thimble, and if you're struggling to pull this thread out with your needle in it, then you may also want to use a pair of pliers. Okay, so I'm just going to, this stitch now, I'm just going to go down here so it's straight, but I'm just going to come up at the side just there. Give that a little bit of a wiggle. Okay, so we've got that nice little row of stitches just there. So now we're going to flick the ribbon back and we're going to start to do this side. And I always have to get on one side or the other. Okay, so just going to hold that there like that, make sure that that's all nicely out of the way. Okay, and then now we are whipping again, but we're whipping this way. So if you are left-handed or right-handed, you'll always find it easier to go one way. So I found it much easier to go this way than I'm going to find it going this way. So to go this way, what I'm going to actually do, so it makes it easier, because I find it easier going in and coming up. So I'm actually going to go down here, okay, just do a little stay stitch just there, okay, and then I'm going to go in here and back out there, which is exactly what I did at the top, but I did it the other way around. So this bit's going to be a bit tricky because it's through quite a deep layer, so you'll have to make sure that you push this needle up, and you might want to push that up with a thimble, because if you try and push it up with your thumb, you will end up hurting your thumb. Okay, so just make sure you come up, give it a little bit of a wiggle like that. So this time, this is our angle here, coming up. Give it a bit of a wiggle coming out there as well. If you wiggle it, it will come out eventually, but it's quite tight because obviously it's going through that thicker fabric just there. But you've got your nice little straight stab stitch there now. Okay, so we're just going to come down and up like that. Give that a little bit of a wiggle. down, and up like that. And all the time just making sure that you're not coming through the satin. So we've done that side and we've not come through the satin. Okay, that's really quite important there. So at an angle there, try and get your stitches the same distance apart. Okay, so we're going to come in and then up like that. And this really, really secures it nicely in place, because that's the whole aim, is that you want to securely attach your ribbon so that it doesn't come off when you're doing your ballet. So just in there like that. And now we're getting to this little end. Okay, so let's just make sure we tuck that in, and we'll get another further stitch there. Okay, and you can actually do this one at a slight angle if you wanted to, so that this secures that down. And then obviously we can come up just here at the bottom of there, and then that nicely holds that, and you can nicely hold that one in. We'll just take that out. Okay, and now we're going to be coming up this way. So again, I prefer to go into, and up. Okay, so I'm just going to go slightly over like that, so that we form this nice little, do a nice little one just at the end here. Okay, so we're going to just carry on now along that very edge, and we're obviously, because this is folded over, it just makes it look much neater. Okay, so we're just coming up at that angle, just like that, going down in and then up. Don't go too far apart with these stitches. You want to make sure that you go close enough together. Okay, and then it's a little bit harder when you're doing this area, because obviously it's not as it's a little bit further in, so it's not as easy to be catching in your fabric and holding it. There's a lot going on when you're having to hold it and you're having to do your stitches, and there's a lot to think about. So let's just catch that in, come up like that, give it a little wiggle, and then go back down, and we'll just put one right on that edge. Okay, just like that. Right, so when you're finishing it off, you could do a knot, but obviously if you do a knot, then it's actually going to potentially stick in your foot. So what I would prefer to do is just go down into the fabric and back up. So just do a little stay stitch like that. Okay, come back up like that. So you've got that stitch, and then make sure that you go down into that stitch and then back up there, and then that'll just act like a knot, because you're going through that thread. And because then you've got your little tail just here, because you've got your little tail just there, you can just snip that off with your scissors, and then you won't have any tails visible on the surface. And there you go, it's all really nicely attached to your shoe, just like that.